Welcome to this third and last session of this part of the module, Emotional Mediation in NTSB Dockets. Now we are going to see what is exactly communicated and in what way. Accident reporting, and in this case aviation accident reporting, is a complex narrative, and we could trace a line of emotion, that is of vividness and dialogism, embodied in a storytelling format across the different genres employed by the board. So the peak of vividness or emotion is found in dockets or synopsis of the full report and animations in lay genres, and it decreases towards expert genres. It rises again in legal documents, the legal documents associated to an investigation, because they usually include direct speech testimonies of witnesses and actors. These genres feed on one another and hold an interrelationship. We can see that full report and legal documents are expert genres, slideshow presentations, which are not always present in an investigation, and animations, which have been recently incorporated to the National Transportation Safety Board's website. They could be considered intermediate genres. The rest, the docket, the abstract, the executive summary, and the press release are easily understood and handled by a lay audience. As regards the docket, it is the product of a complex narrative as well that involves three main domains or realms. There's personal, technical, and legal. In the personal realm, there are the statements of the staff, of the crew involved, and the supporting stories of witnesses, colleagues, and passengers. They are obtained through field interviews and conversations or cabin voice recordings, CVR. This personal information is used in technical reports together with the analysis by experts of artifacts such as photographs or the remains of the wreckage, the terrain, and specific chunks of the cabin recordings. Now, all this information coming from the personal and technical domains is sifted through, in turn, to elaborate legal text of a normative kind, such as procedures, standards, protocols, and regulations, or can be taken as evidence to court. We must underline that the writing of aviation accident reporting and its dockets is always collaborative. That is, several hands and actors intervene in the process. Aviation authorities, besides the field researchers, aviation authorities, manufacturers, operators, members of the board who successively give their opinion, make some observations, and until it is, the document is finally approved for publication. One thing is to release a document, that is, to declassify it and prevent it from being confidential, and another is to make it public. The board chose in 2009 to proactively disseminate its investigations through the internet. Now, focusing on the docket, it is a hybrid genre. Why is that? Because it informs, performs, and prescribes. That is, it tells what happened and finds causes for the accident, does things with words when it determines the causes, and that's why there's a performative verb part of the formulaic language introducing every verdict, the National Transportation Safety Board determines that and issues recommendations for the future. It is at the same time retrospective and prospective, looks back into the past and ahead into the future. It is technical and emotional, as we said. Oral and literate, includes conversation and prefabricated formulaic language. It can be structured, contain headings, and have a conventional format of technical report or abstract. It is intertextual and interdiscursive. Intertextual because it joins the voices of several actors in the accident and previous text, for example, normative text or also previous investigations by the board, and interdiscursive because it comprises the traditional structure or move sequence of the scientific abstract, introduction, method, results, discussion or conclusion, and the narrative frame Labov detected in natural narrators. We will see what it is like. It is orientation, abstract orientation, complication, resolution, and coda. It has features of the language of the technical report, the legal statement, and drama and storytelling. On average, it can be 200 or up to 400 words long. It can be longer than that and shorter than that as well. And it is classified into 3 types, depending on its content focus, that is factual, probable cause, or preliminary, and the degree of severity of the accident, fatal, non-fatal, and incident. Factual dockets just provide facts about what happened, but do not speculate about the causes of the accident. Probable cause ones do. They try to build hypotheses on what might have happened, and preliminary dockets just reflect the investigation stage they report on, that is, a very early one. Now, according to the degrees of severity, fatal involve deaths and a massive destruction of equipment, non-fatal injures and less destruction, and incident reports just deal with nuisances or activation of emergency services or minor effects. It can go alone or be part of the full report, but most often it goes alone, and it's the first contact the general public has with the reporting of an accident. I studied over 1,500 samples, all of them fatal and speculative, that is, probable cause ones, because I expected to find more emotion and more subjectivity than in the other types. This is what a docket looks like. We see the length. It resembles a conventional scientific abstract, but it has a kind of structured part at the very beginning with headings. So there are the headings or headers and the body of text. In green, we can read the reporting thread. This is the narrative thread or the backbone of the abstract, which vertebrates all the content. Was observed too, reported that, reported, no evidence of, and finally the National Transportation Safety Board determines, which is the chunk of formulaic language introducing the verdict. So it merges, as I said, the traditional scientific abstract structure and the Labovian frame for natural narrators That is, this would be the abstract, an extreme summary of the narrative, and the coda, injuries, one fatal, one death is involved, states the importance of the reporting. The orientation is the initial framing of the action, the contextualization. Then comes the complication, the action triggering conflict, and the resolution, the final outcome. Now, it is very different the way other agencies in the world tackle their reportings. For example, the Air Accidents Investigation Branch of the United Kingdom presents a much more sanitized style, a single genre, monomodal way of communication, written, monologic. There's just one single voice, the voice of the agency. There are no victim or witness stories. There is no deference towards the audience, no glossing of technical terms, and the content is restricted to the history of flight, relevant norms, and the final verdict. So here we have the headed section, with the headings, very similar to the American dockets. And this is what they call, instead of docket, summary. This is the British style. These green headings capitalized in uppercase are mine. They are non-existent in the original version. Now, within accident reporting, the National Transportation Safety Board has to report on its own actions. When it does so, it is extremely modest, so it complies with the politeness maxim of modesty. It refers to itself through abstract letters, which are inanimate subjects, usually signaling nouns, relieving the board of agency. So we found lots of names such as examination, investigation, report, inspections, and so on and so forth. And expert figures are mentioned in a very general way and in the third person. Here we have some examples. So this contrasts with the storytelling quality adopted in many dockets. Storytelling means that there is a plot or a storyline, characters, and an evolution of that plot or storyline over time. Stories are more emotional and memorable than plain technical reporting. They allow for a climax, which captures attention, and they are liminal between repetition and image. That's why they are so memorable. Sometimes we find multivocal testimonies embedded in other testimonies, so a double direct speech structure, and this allows for the transmission of more detail. They can be simultaneously engaging, they involve the audience, but also, as I mentioned with the abstract letters, they relieve the board of agency. They are less involving when it comes to morally judging or evaluating behaviors, for example. So they can be more dramatic, stories are more dramatic, but at the same time more detached, because other characters serve as shields or hedges for the National Transportation Safety Board's voice. Also, stories involve many voices and transmit the idea that aircraft accident reporting is a social act that involves narrators, characters, witnesses, and the whole of the aviation community. Sometimes we find openings that resemble those of novels in medias res, with the action already started. And this gives a literary tinge to the reporting. The airport is on a plateau, and the surrounding terrain is lower than the runway. Or it starts with the action of certain actors we know nothing about, and we need to read further to find out. It is not infrequent to find indirect direct speech, that is, an abrupt interruption of indirect speech with direct speech testimony, like here, had experienced a total power failure, and that he would be returning to the airport. This is, by contrast, a full frame orientation, or a complete framing, giving the date, the time, the number of flights, the model of airplane, the objective, and what happened, the location and what happened. This is more conventional. Emotion is also present in the overwhelming amount of details that are sometimes given, apparently superfluous to the storyline. For example, who cares about what one of the actors, the pilot, had been watching before the flight? Or in the second example, we find too many details which are useless to the final outcome of the accident or the determination of its final course, but create an emotional atmosphere that captures the reader's attention. Or what's the matter with being in the front yard with their coffee and newspaper, in the case of two witnesses? This is totally unnecessary. Proximization, that is, the inclusion of direct testimonies to bring the risk or the danger closer to the reader, to the audience, is accomplished in a very effective way in these two examples. Mayday, Mayday, we are going down, which produces a very dramatic effect, or through embeddings of direct speech within direct speech. This is a loop within a loop. A witness stated, "I looked out of my window right in front of my desk after a co-worker said, 'Oh my God.'" So we have different actors in red, different reporting structures in green, and the actual speech in orange. We may also find whole chunks of conversations between pilots and air traffic controllers, which gives the reporting a theatrical tone. And in this case, the deictic center, that is, the circumstances of the accident, are made proximal to the audience. So the past becomes the present, the there becomes the here, and the audience is involved in the cockpit. So it looks like something that should affect others, or an outgroup of people involves us into the action. Emotion through direct speech is also used very subtly to dispraise or blame when judging attitudes and behaviors, mostly those of the pilots who keep being, even today, the major cause. I mean, accidents are mostly caused by human failure, so pilots are the major cause of accidents, either because they violate rules, they are inexperienced or tired or have health problems. The other causes are much lower. Again, we could trace a decline of emotion and involvement in the evaluation of these behaviors and attitudes from pilots. There is a complete diluted agency in nominalization. For example, we can speak of impairment from alcohol consumption. We may find abstract rhetoric with impersonal structures. The pilot was impaired due to alcohol ingestion as a passive subject. Abstract rhetoric, toxicological testing detected in the blood of the pilot. Implicatures, that is, inferred meanings, together with impersonality, make us infer the agency of the pilot in the accident. Within the wreckage, an open container of beer was found located in the cockpit at the base of the pilot's seat, even though nothing is proved with this statement, but there is some evaluation and the arousal of some emotion. And direct speech restores agency completely to the actor, to the pilot in this case. The witnesses said that the passenger told them that he and the other pilot were going to show you guys what flying is about. So this is evaluation, indirect and subtle evaluation, and through direct speech, which arouses emotion. So we find a clash between conversational cooperation maxims and politeness maxims. Sometimes too much detail is given, so this affects the quantity maxim. Sometimes it is not totally pertinent to the storyline, and we find in medias res openings which are not orderly in the presentation of information. And this goes against the maxims of generosity, approbation, and sympathy or tact. That is, generosity intends to minimize the effort of others, approbation to minimize the negative criticism of others, and sympathy and tact try to empathize with our audience and avoid any imposition on it. So this is caused by excessive disclosure and explicitness at times. In this table, we can see in what ways emotion contributes to comply with the corresponding politeness maxim or flouts it or transgresses it. For example, it's very strange to find gruesome detail and words such as corpse, wound, deadly, blood or bleed, and catastrophe, because they would hurt, the audience sensitivity. But sometimes excessive detail is given to create an emotional atmosphere. As a conclusion, we could say that emotion through direct speech reporting contributes not only to express testimonies through many voices, but also brands the institution, the National Transportation Safety Board, which could be said to have a narrative identity, a narrative self. Direct reporting, direct speech, and the emotion it conveys popularizes genres and investigations and helps explain. It's a didactic tool, but also a political tool.